the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site covering, of course, the Arizona Cardinals. And we are in our yearly offseason series where we do opponent previews. We have one show per opponent that the Cardinals will have in the upcoming seasons, which means a total of 14 shows. And we start this show is about our season opener. The Cardinals will be on the road at SoFi Stadium in week 1, taking on the LA Chargers. And as he has a couple of times, Gavino Borquez joins me, the lead writer for Chargers Wire. Gavino, how have you been, and how's the summer been?
It's been going pretty good. Again, I'm looking forward to training camp preseason to finally start, but it seems like I'm on this show like every single year almost. Like I don't know what it is. Like I love talking to you and all that, but it's just like I don't know. And me being like an Arizona native out here too, just like Jess, it's like, you know, it seems like every single summer you're reaching out to me and it's like, oh, we're playing the Cardinals again. So it seems like it's been a theme.
Yeah, it's weird because they don't play each other in the regular season that often, but or maybe the 4 years that usually goes just fly by. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what it is? But it's good to have you back on. The Chargers coming off of a successful season. It was a different season for the AFC West because the Chiefs faltered. And it was all about the Broncos and the Chargers last season. And so last year, they start off pretty hot, and they just really were good until right at the very end of the season. They finished the year 11-6. They make it to the playoffs and ultimately lose an ugly game in the wild card round against the New England Patriots, who eventually went to the Super Bowl. When you look at what happened last season, what was the good and what was the not as good?
Yeah, so the good, the defense. So led by now Ravens head coach Jesse Minter. The defense was what carried the team as a whole because the offense, which is the bad, dealt with injuries along the offensive line. You know, you lose Rashawn Slater for the whole season due to a patellar tendon injury. Joe Alt, you know, who shined as a rookie, he was limited to less than 300 snaps due to an ankle injury, and that's kind of the whole interior offensive line struggled immensely because missing both of them. You know, you can point to the offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, who was fired, but I would say like the good was the defense. You know, that's why, you know, Jesse Minter got a head coaching job. Like it only took him 2 seasons to be in the league to be recognized, and just his units, just his scheme as a whole, and then his personnel with what he kind of was able to create. That was probably the good. You know, Justin Herbert, you can put him in that category because despite facing immense pressure every other snap, him being Justin Herbert being a robot, he, you know, was able to elevate the team as well. But Herbert also dealt with an injury too. He had a broken hand on you know, mid-season on his non-throwing hand. So, you know, that's what's going to happen when you're facing the heat every other snap.
Yeah, Herbert it kind of feels like at this point, everyone except Justin Herbert is one of the absolutely most talented and best quarterbacks in the NFL, a guy that who probably falls just outside the top 4 guys who everyone talks about them. But he also suffers from the same thing Phillip Rivers suffered from, and that's being on the Chargers, where your teams are good, but not quite good enough in the end of the year. He had a fantastic year. Yeah, the injuries that you guys had to deal with was crazy. Like whether it was the offensive line, the bouncing between running backs, the way like you had Najee Harris, you've had Kamani Vidal, who was their leading rusher, Omarion Hampton, one of they're drafted in the first round. Justin Herbert ends up being number 3 by not very much. Like he is almost the second leading rusher on the team. And then on top of that, you had lots of guys go over 600, but you didn't have the dominant performance from Ladd McConkey last year. After his big rookie season, he goes 66 for 789. Keenan Allen, 81 catches, 777 yards in his return after you were at the Bears. But yeah, defensively, the big jump came from Tuli Tuipulotu, who became the leading sack lead, who was their sack leader with 13 sacks. Who else stood out last year on the defensive side of the ball?
So Derwin James definitely earning second team all pro. He's their chess piece, so he primarily plays like in the nickel, but he's able to take away tight ends, slot receivers, make plays in the run game. He stood out, but Tier Tart, defensive lineman, so he earned a 3-year extension. So he was signed initially as kind of just like a prove it type of guy, but this coaching staff, they elevated him, a defensive line coach, Mike Elston, into like becoming this really good interior defensive lineman, stout against the run with some pass rush juice. So Tier Tart was a standout in the middle of the defense. Deion Henley, so he had some setbacks, but he still had over 100 tackles. And Dante Jackson, who they signed to a 2-year deal, former Steeler. He was kind of like that main guy, the veteran in the cornerback room. So he stood out quite a bit too. I think he ended up with 12 passes defended and 4 interceptions. So he was always around the ball. And yeah, mainly those guys. Khalil Mack, again, they brought him back for another year. So he dealt with some setbacks as well, some injuries, but he's that power rusher that is going to be firm against the run. So he was that guy last year, but they had the personnel, but a lot of it had to do with Jesse Minter's scheme, and then just like these rising coaches on their staff that helped elevate that even more.
How does Tony Jefferson do it? Now he twice there were 2 different seasons. He was out of the NFL in 2020. Then he retired in 2023. He comes back for 2 years of the Chargers, and he's back again this year. But last year he had 4 interceptions, 57 tackles. Do you know how many interceptions that he had in his entire career before last year?
How many?
4. He had as many interceptions. He broke up more passes last season than he did in his entire career. He had the most tackles that he's had since 2018. How was that just being a piece of that Jesse Minter defense, or like how did he end up being out of the NFL for 2 years?
Yeah, so again, definitely benefited from Jesse Minter's scheme, but he's like a really smart player. Like he's just one of those guys that, not great like athletically or anything, but he just like knows how to be around the ball. I think, like you mentioned, career high numbers, interceptions 4, passes defended 7, and then like passer rating allowed was like 36 or something like that, which was like it ranked 3rd among like all safeties, I believe. So like he's just one of those veterans, just tone setters just that knows how to like be around the ball. Like he's very smart. And he had his opportunities and he took advantage of them. And again, like he came out of retirement. He was on like the Ravens scouting department, and he came out and earned him another contract with the Chargers.
Yeah, awesome. So let's move on to this past offseason. Coming up next on the Rise Up Here podcast, Pacific Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's move on. Talk about what the Chargers did in free agency, what they did in draft. That's coming up next in Rise Up Red. We're back on the Rise Up Here podcast, Pacific Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking to Gavino Borquez of Chargers Wire as we preview. This is our opponent preview show of the Cardinals' Week 1 opponent, the LA Chargers. In free agency, there weren't massive moves. Obviously, they lost Zion Johnson, who left to the Browns. They lost Odafe Owe to the Commanders. Deshaun Hand to the Falcons. But were there any impact losses that they had in free agency?
Odafe Owe was a big one. He came on and was a beast. And honestly, I thought that the Chargers were going to re-sign him and run it back with the trio that they had with Khalil Mack, Thule, and Odafe Owe. So he was definitely like the biggest loss. Keenan Allen, who was the most productive receiver last season. You mentioned earlier, with Lad McConkey, he took that signing was kind of odd, because Keenan Allen, yes, he led the team in receiving and whatnot, but it was kind of redundant with Lad McConkey, and that's why McConkey. I know there was a lot of fantasy owners that weren't happy. They drafted him earlier. They were expecting to get this high production, but with Keenan playing in the slot too, yes, they had Lad McConkey play on the outside, but Keenan became Justin's go-to target. So losing Keenan Allen, it's not a huge loss, but when you look at it on paper, he was a notable veteran. And then you mentioned Zion Johnson, who actually played really well this past season. I knew that there was going to be a team that was going to throw him a bag, which the Browns ultimately did. So yeah, those would be the main few that I would say, because even though they lost players, what they did to add to the team kind of weighed above that.
And on their additions, they bring in veteran center Tyler Biadasz, previously of the Cowboys, previously the Commanders. The Cardinals released Dalvin Tomlinson. They had signed him to a 2-year pretty big deal, and was not bad, but he was not impactful for the Cardinals and their terrible defense. But he signs with the Chargers. He'll surely end up being better with that defense there. They add Keaton Mitchell. What were obviously then they give Derwin James that big contract to keep him around. What are the impact moves that they made in free agency? How do you see them impacting them this coming season?
Yeah, so definitely the offensive side of the ball. The Chargers the Chargers offensive line was very bad. I'll just put it that way. And again, we mentioned the injuries to Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, but just the interior was atrocious, and they completely cleaned house. Obviously, Zion Johnson, new team. Bradley Bozeman retired, their former center, and then Mekhi Becton, he remains unsigned, I believe. So they had 3 interior spots to fill. So with center, Tyler Biadasz, Cole Strange, who's familiar with Mike McDaniel's offense, he's going to be right guard, and then for left guard, they have more of a competition with one of them being I'm going to butcher his pronunciation. Zakire Owashika from the Lions. So more of a signing who's not a big name guy or whatever, but has a lot of starts. He has a lot of experience. So that interior offensive line, all new players. that's what their main focus. But aside from that, just improving their run game. We saw Marion Hampton flash in his rookie year, Kamani Vidal stepping in for him. So along with keeping Justin Herbert protected with like the near interior, it's just the moves that they made for the run game. So they signed Charlie Collar, who's one of the better run blocking tight ends, Alec Ingold, a really good run blocking fullback, and then also Keaton Mitchell too. In order to like get and thrive in Mike McDaniel's offense, you need speed, which he kind of injects that explosiveness into the backfield that they don't have. Of course, like Omar and Hampton, he should flourish in the system. So should Kamani Vidal, but not really much of a burner. So they went out inside Keaton Mitchell. So they made that a priority, was to really bolster the run game with the moves that they made in free agency.
Failed to mention, you mentioned Jesse Minter leaving to coach the Ravens. They add Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator after he was fired by the Miami Dolphins, and Chris O'Leary now the defensive coordinator. Do you expect anything different defensively, schematically? If it'll be much different than it was before? Is O'Leary a Minter guy, or what is his background?
Yeah, so O'Leary is a Minter guy. So Chris O'Leary, he served as the safeties coach in 2024. So him like being like in that Jesse Minter scheme. So before coming into the league, he was the safeties defensive backs coach at Notre Dame, and then came to the league in 2024, the same year as Jim Harbaugh. So he brought him on board. And, within that year, he was able to learn under Jesse Minter, and then just being in that scheme. Then he leaves for the college ranks. So he goes to Western Michigan and becomes the defensive coordinator this past season. Crushed it, top numbers across the board. So then, Jim Harbaugh was like, well, you coach on this team, so you're familiar with the system. You prove your worth as a defensive coordinator, so let's bring you back. Jesse Minter's gone, so yeah, because they had like a wide net of like defensive coordinators, like with plenty of experience. So it came as a surprise for some, but I think it was honestly in the works all along, which we didn't really think about. Is that Jim Harbaugh said, hey, like you obviously are going to get promoted to be a defensive coordinator, prove your worth in that role, and then we'll bring you back. So even though they had like the extensive interviews with some of these like top candidates, I think they had O'Leary in mind all along, just given that he was familiar with the personnel, and then just being under the Jesse Minter tree.
And then we go to the draft, and their biggest move, obviously their first round pick, is they get Miami edge Akeem Mesidor. Really promising, especially when you get him at pick number 22. Jake Slaughter, round 2, center out of Florida. Mississippi State receiver Brennan Thompson in round 4. Tell us about the draft picks. Who is expected to make an impact in year 1, and then kind of tell about guys that were the back end and the type of roles they'll have moving forward. How much is depth? How much is project? How much is development?
So Akeem Mesidor, he's going to play immediately. So he's going to come on the field and rush on the interior, on the outside. So they're going to do a lot of 3 edge rusher packages with him, Thule and Khalil Mack. And, I know that age was a question mark for him, but general manager Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh talked about this, is that, with his age, it just means that he's more seasoned, he's more mature. And like you turn on the tape and you see this guy who's very good, with his hands, also his lower half to be able to set up his rush. He offers some power too. So, I was pretty excited with the pick. I know some people were swayed away when they see like how old he is, 25, but again, I know that he's been able to step on the field and be able to contribute, and that's what they need after losing Odafe Owe, because they hadn't made any moves to the edge rusher room. They had Bud Dupree and Kyle Kennard, former 4th-round pick, so it almost like made you think that the Chargers were going to take an edge rusher within the first couple rounds, which they addressed at number 22. So he'll contribute right away. Jake Slaughter, a head scratching pick at the time because he was exclusively a center. Well, it's like, well, the Chargers have Tyler Biotish, but I knew right away that they were planning on moving him to guard, and which he's going to compete for the left guard starting job. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not starting week 1. Because I mentioned, Keiro Awashika, like him having the experience in this league, that may kind of like bump him up. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Slaughter over time becomes a starter. But also at the same time, when Tyler Biotish is done, kicking him out to center. And then Brendan Thompson, he will have a role in this offense because the wide receiver room was lacking speed. They don't have like the explosiveness. And in order for this Mike McDaniel offense to go, you need that. So he has the traits like a sub 4.3 guy to be able to like stretch the field vertically. He's going to get on the field early on, and I expect him to contribute. We talk about back end guys. Genesis Smith, the safety out of Arizona. So he was also drafted in the 4th round. They had 3 4th-round picks. Derwin James, he plays in the nickel role. So the Chargers, they're going to go need another safety alongside Elijah Molden. So Genesis Smith, rangy, athletic, length type of safety to just make plays on the ball. Like, yes, he's not a great tackler at all. I think this coaching staff can elevate him, but he is really, really good in coverage, and I could see him having a role early on as well. And Nick Barrett, their 5th-round pick, defensive tackle out of South Carolina, he's going to be a depth piece right away. So he's really strong against the run, and with given like how much they rotate their defensive linemen, I could see him coming on the field early on as a rookie as well. And the rest of the draft was offensive linemen. So Travis Burke, massive 6'8" tackle. So that was a really good pick because we talked about just the injuries along the offensive line. So he offers depth at tackle. There's no guarantee that Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt are going to stay healthy. So he's someone who could come in, I think, if injuries were to occur. And then Logan Taylor, guard out of Boston College, and Alex Harkey, guard out of Oregon. They're just more depth along the interior offensive line. So it wasn't like with how many picks that they had. They traded back to get some picks, so they ended up with 8. Like, it was a good draft class, like considering that half their picks were offensive linemen. They really made the priority to like to address the offensive line, but then also just got like some quality depth pieces and an immediate contributor with Akeem Messidor.
All right. Good stuff. Let's talk about the coming season. So coming up next on the Res of Secret podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's move on and discuss what the Chargers expect in 2026. That's coming next on Res of Red. We're back on the Res of Secret podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web, talking to Gavino Borquez of the Chargers Wire. As we look ahead to the 2026 season, new offensive and defensive coordinators, but they still play in the AFC West, where they and the Broncos made the playoffs. The Chiefs will get Patrick Mahomes back this coming season. We'll see how early that is, but it's going to be a competitive. And then you've got the bad but upcoming Raiders. We'll see how it goes with them. But what are sort of expectations for the 2026 season for the Chargers?
Expectations once again are super high with this team, just like every other year. Like, it's always the Chargers. They're contenders. This is the year that they finally win like the AFC West. I firmly believe that this would be the year. So we're looking at a team that should win, should hit the double digit mark. They finished 11-6 the past 2 seasons. I could see 11-6, 12-5 because they have a pretty tough schedule to begin with, but they also have the core to really compete to make a deep run. Finally, I know that we say this every single year, but Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, but just the addition to Mike McDaniel, it's so huge for this team because Herbert's had so many offensive coordinators dating back to his time at Oregon. It seems like every other year they're getting a new offensive coordinator for him, but I think they finally got the guy with someone who's creative, innovative, that's going to be able to finally like unlock him. So with that, I think you're looking, like I said, at 11, 12 wins could finally like make a push to win the AFC for the first time in, more than a decade. So yeah, I would say expectations are pretty high.
Do Chargers fans, now a lot of other fan bases are very impatient. And even when they are right on the edge, they're making the playoffs. Do Chargers fans, are they as demanding to where a team that they see should be good but doesn't quite get this? No, they're making the postseason fairly consistently, but not having postseason success. What is kind of the vibe of the fan base? Are they like, is Jim Harbaugh going to take heat for a quote unquote playoff failure this year?
If there's no injuries, especially to the offensive line, and they underperform and they're like a one and done in playoffs, then yes, he's going to start to take some heat for that. But if there were injuries, they're going to blame the injuries. But this is kind of the year that fans see this Chargers team where it's like we have to contend, because with Mike McDaniel, he may be like a one and done type of thing as well. He may get I wouldn't be surprised if teams are already looking to bring him in as a head coach or something. So that's why like this would be the year. And I could just based on like the fan base, how it is on social media, like their expectations are pretty close, like Super Bowl or bust, because they're just scared of like the thought of what's going to happen to the roster. Like Justin Herbert has many more years to play, but there's no getting like maybe even 2 years with Mike McDaniel, and just like how are they going to replace him? So like this is the year that they believe that they can make the deep run, despite like how competitive the AFC is. They feel like, okay, this is our time to make it all, or like, no, we're going to start to like, blame Jim Harbaugh. Like it's always been like the injuries thing. And yes, Jim Harbaugh kind of faced a little bit of scrutiny this past year. But they have the depth and they've kind of like prepped this whole offseason for like in case of injuries, that type of thing.
And is he going to let McDaniel just do his thing? I know Harbaugh is a hardcore, slow the game down, run the football. Like there's old school to him. Is he going to let Mike McDaniel be Mike McDaniel? And now, granted, Mike McDaniel does design a very good run game, but is he going to basically give McDaniel reins of the offense?
Yeah. I think he is, and just based on like what I heard at minicamp is that the whole offense, the offensive line is getting ready to shift to an outside zone scheme, which goes away from the power gap scheme that Harbaugh and then former offensive coordinator Greg Roman ran. So that's why, when they hired Mike McDaniel initially, that was the biggest question, is you have this like speed outside zone guy in McDaniel versus like smash mouth football with Harbaugh. And I think they're going to let McDaniel like call the shots like the entire season.
Now, the last piece, and this is, we always ask this, is what Chargers fans and the Chargers view the Cardinals. I understand where the Cardinals are at this year. They were a terrible team who appear not to have gotten any better with talent on their roster. So as you look at that week 1 matchup, we're not making predictions, but is that a marking a win in pen going to be more competitive than you think, or like what is the view of that week 1 game against the Cardinals?
It's going to be a double-digit win,
and it should be.
Yeah, with them being at home too. I know that the Cardinals have given the Chargers a hard time.
Didn't the Cardinals 4 games, man? They come down to the wire every single time.
But it seems like they're always they seem like they've played in Arizona. Like all of their recent meetings have been in Arizona, and I've been in attendance for a couple of them. And again, you're having, I'm pretty sure, what was it? Was it Jalen Reagor that?
Oh yes, he got that ball punched out.
Yeah, but it's like Jalen Reagor. That's how this team injuries. Why is Jalen Reagor playing in the first place? No, but the Cardinals have given the Chargers problems in the past, but no, I think they're looking to really set the tone, and they want to beat up on a very bad team because they need these wins before they get into the tougher stretch of the season. So 2 touchdowns at least.
And it should be on the at home with a coaching staff with continuity, at least with the head coach, a better schemed offense for the modern NFL, the better quarterback, still a great defense against a Cardinals offense that put up numbers in garbage time and gave up loads of points last year. So that'll wrap up this edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast, special of Cardinals Talk on the Web. That's Gavino Borquez. You can find his work over at the Chargers Wire, one of our sister sites. Gavino, what else do you got going on these days?
Trip to Italy, and then just hanging out with family, just trying to relax before the season starts, because we know it's
coming, and it's not only a marathon, but it's a sprint every week as a marathon.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Gavino, so much for your time. That will wrap up this edition of the show. We've got more opponent previews coming, as well as shows with my regular co-host, Seth Cox. Until then, that's Gavino Borquez. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, Sea Red, and of course, Rise Up, C-Red.